I was just a laundry room convict in the dark, but he walked in, not to guard me, but to hear a man like me speak for the first time. They threw me in here like dirt swept into a corner. Not worth fixing, not worth seeing. But then came that boy, too clean, too kind, and he didn't come to lock me down. He came to listen. The industrial washing machines hummed like ghosts in the background, grinding out the sins of men who'd long stopped caring about stains. I was bent over a bin of gray, bleach-burned uniforms when I heard the door creak open. I didn't bother looking up. No one came here except when something broke or when they wanted to break something. I heard you used to sing, came a voice that didn't belong in here. Too soft. Too clear. I froze. My hand still gripped a pair of boxer briefs that belonged to some guy who once stabbed a man over peanut butter. I slowly looked up. He was young, maybe 25, and wearing the standard CO khakis. But he wasn't standing like them. He wasn't puffed up with power or hiding behind a clipboard. He was standing like he wanted to be here. Like he'd chosen this dusty, sour-smelling place to talk to someone who hadn't heard their own name said kindly in 5 years. "Do I know you?" I asked, voice rough as the cinderblock walls. He stepped closer. "No. But I know you." That line hit like a shot. "No. But I know you." I hadn't had a real conversation in years. In here, you learn not to give more than grunts and shrugs. Words make you visible. Visibility gets you hurt. But this kid didn't seem afraid of what he might see. He extended his hand. "I'm Officer Julian Keene." I didn't take it. Not because I wanted to be rude. But because I wasn't sure I still remembered how to accept a hand like that without wondering what it would take from me. "I don't go by much anymore," I said. "But they used to call me Red." "Red?" he repeated, with a smile that didn't mock. "Like the singer?" I flinched. That name used to mean something. Back when I was a lounge singer in Atlanta, before the drugs, the deal gone wrong, and the man whose death I still taste every night. Red Lane. Smooth. Sultry. The kind of voice that made straight men question things and queer men fall too fast. Now it was just a sound they used on the intercom to send me to mop blood off a bathroom floor. He noticed the shift in my face and didn't push. Just looked around the room. "You got a good setup here," he said, nodding to the machines. "Smells like lemons and burnt memories." I snorted. It was the first sound like laughter that had come out of me in months. "You got jokes, huh?" "Sometimes," he said. "When I'm nervous." I eyed him. "You nervous around me?" "No," he said, eyes locking on mine. "I'm nervous because I don't want to screw this up." This. Like this was something. Like it wasn't just a guard standing too long in a laundry room talking to a convict who didn't matter. It started like that. Just 10-minute visits during shift breaks. Always when no one was looking. At first, we talked about stupid things: weather, the busted vending machine, a cockroach that survived 5 bleach cycles. But slowly, I started to hear myself again. In the echoes of my voice, I found pieces I thought I'd buried. He asked about my music. I told him about the night I opened for Prince. He asked about my trial. I told him the truth I'd never dared say out loud. "I didn't kill him," I whispered one day, as I folded sheets with trembling hands. But I didn't stop it either. "And that makes me guilty too, doesn't it?" Julian didn't answer right away. Just stood there with that look, half heartbreak, half revolution. Then he said something I'll never forget. "Maybe guilt isn't about what you did, but about what you carry. And maybe you've carried enough." Rumors swirled, as they always do. A CO getting too friendly with a lifer. Whispers of "faggot" in the mess hall. Dirty looks from both sides. But he didn't flinch. One night, he brought me a cassette player. Said it was a donation from a local church. They won't miss it, he grinned. I stared at it like it was a bomb. You want me to sing? I asked. I want you to feel again, he said. Even if it's just in here. So I did. I sang into a damp towel to muffle the sound. Sam Cooke. Nina Simone. Old soul songs that hurt so good they scraped the rust off my heart. Sometimes, he closed his eyes while I sang. And sometimes, I did too, just to pretend we weren't in hell. 2 months in, they transferred me to solitary for safety reasons. I knew the real reason. Someone had seen. Someone had heard. I spent 16 days in a room so small I forgot how to stretch. But in that darkness, I replayed his face, his words, his stupid lemon jokes. And I knew I couldn't go back to silence. When they let me out, I found him waiting by the laundry room door, hands tucked into his pockets like a boy about to ask his crush to prom. You okay? He asked. I wasn't. But I nodded. I want to get you out, he said. I laughed. Out of prison? He nodded. There's a review board. I've been reading your case. There's holes. You were railroaded. I confessed. You protected someone. I looked away. That part was still too raw. Still too dangerous. You don't owe me this, I said. I want to do this, he whispered. You're more than this place. He said it like a prayer. And I didn't have the heart to stop him. That night, I wrote a letter to the board. First time I picked up a pen in years. My hand shook. But my voice didn't. I told them about the man I loved, the one who died. I told them about the truth I never said. And I told them about the man who walked into a laundry room and changed everything just by listening. The letter was my truth stripped bare, ugly, real. I didn't dress it up with excuses. I didn't ask for pity. I told them I had loved a man, Marcus, and that love, hidden and feared, had gotten him killed. I told them I took the fall because his name couldn't die twice. And still, I didn't expect anything. Julian did. He carried hope like a secret flame, shielding it with both hands, even when the wind howled. Weeks passed. No reply. He'd sit with me in the laundry room, sometimes silent, sometimes reading me poems from a dog-eared Langston Hughes book he kept folded in his pocket. I listened, not to the words but to him. To how his voice trembled when he read something tender. To how he paused before lines that cut too close to bone. He was unraveling, just like me. Unraveling toward the truth. One day, I stopped folding and looked at him. Really looked at him. You ever scared you're falling for the wrong person? I asked. He blinked. Swallowed. All the time, he said. And still. I fall. He didn't say it outright. But he didn't have to. I knew. He didn't want to save me. He loved me. We kissed for the first time on a night so quiet, the machines had stopped humming as if the prison itself was holding its breath. It wasn't hungry or rushed. It was soft. Grateful. Like we were apologizing to each other for all the years lost in silence. After that, the laundry room changed. It wasn't just a place to scrub out blood and bleach. It was a sanctuary. A place where we became people again. But prisons don't like softness. They sniff it out like weakness. Crush it before it spreads. And we were already being watched. It started with petty things. I got moved to kitchen duty far from the laundry room. Julian was assigned night shift, miles from my block. Inmates whispered about me behind my back. Some laughed. Some didn't. One morning, I found a note in my bunk, "Queers don't walk out. They get buried in here." I didn't tell Julian. What could he do? He was already risking his job, his life, his freedom just by loving me. But the walls were closing in. I could feel it. So I did the only thing I could. I started singing again. Loudly. Openly. If they were going to come for me, I wouldn't go silent. I sang on my way to chow. I sang in the showers. I sang when I mopped the floors. And people listened. Even the ones who used to mock me started to nod along. A few even hummed. The sound of my voice was louder than their hate. And then, one day, it wasn't just inmates listening. A woman in a navy pantsuit showed up during breakfast. Glasses. Clipboard. Cool eyes. She called my name and said, "Mr. Lane, the parole board has requested a hearing." The room froze. Someone dropped a spoon. I looked up. What? You've been approved for reconsideration. The letter you wrote. It moved people. I couldn't breathe. Julian wasn't allowed at the hearing, but I knew he was close. The board was a panel of 2 men and 1 woman, all with faces like stone. I told them everything again, this time aloud. How Marcus had stolen the drugs. How I'd tried to stop him. How the deal went wrong and the other man pulled the trigger. How I stayed behind, held Marcus as he bled, and how I'd said it was me. Because I couldn't bear for his parents to know the truth. And then I told them about Julian. Not by name. But in feeling. I said there was someone who reminded me that I was still human. That my voice still mattered. That love, even in the darkest place, could light a path forward. The woman on the panel cleared her throat. Her eyes shimmered. "We'll be in touch within 30 days. I nodded. But I already knew. They weren't going to let me go. Not like that. The next day, they transferred Julian. Just like that. No warning. No goodbyes. Gone. The laundry room felt hollow. Like a song missing its final note. I asked around. No one knew where he'd gone. Or if they did, they weren't talking. I stopped singing. Stopped hoping. For 2 weeks, I didn't speak to anyone. I moved like a ghost through the prison, folding clothes, chopping onions, mopping floors until my body was sore and my soul was silent. Then, during mail call, they handed me a small envelope. No return address. Inside was a cassette tape. I stared at it. Then I ran to the chapel and begged the priest to let me use the old tape player. He nodded. I sat alone in a pew, slipped the tape in, and hit play. His voice crackled through. "Hey, Red. It's me." I broke instantly. I don't know where they're sending me. But I know this, I'm going to fight. For you. For us. And I'll keep sending tapes every week so you never forget who you are. Sing again, Red. Not for them. For you. I love you. The tape clicked off. I sat there shaking. Then I opened my mouth and I sang. A hymn. A deep, aching thing from my childhood. And as the notes echoed through the chapel, something in me rose from the dead. Over the next weeks, I received more tapes. He told me about the new facility. The corruption. The loneliness. He talked about the stars, how they looked different there. How he missed hearing my voice. I wrote back, letters I couldn't mail. But I read them to the walls, to the machines, to anyone who'd listen. And one day, something shifted. The chaplain pulled me aside. "There's a man coming next week. A lawyer. Says he's interested in your case." I blinked. "Did Julian?" The chaplain smiled. Said he'd made some noise. People started listening. Hope crept in again, shaky but stubborn. And then, the lawyer came. Black suit. Sharp eyes. Didn't waste time. "I've seen your file," he said. "I believe you were set up. And I think we can prove it." My hands trembled. "Why now?" He handed me a file. Inside was a copy of my letter to the board and a printed transcript from Julian's testimony. He had spoken out. Even if it cost him everything. It wasn't quick. Nothing in the system is. It took 18 months. Hearings. Interviews. Appeals. But eventually, the verdict came down. Case overturned. Inmate Red Lane to be released immediately. I stood in the same spot where I'd arrived 13 years ago. Holding a plastic bag with my few belongings. A guard handed me my release papers. I walked through the gate. Into sunlight that didn't feel real. And there he was. Julian. In jeans and a flannel shirt, leaning on a rusted car, smiling like he'd been waiting forever. I stopped. My knees gave out. He caught me before I hit the ground. "Hey, Red," he whispered. "Took you long enough." I cried into his shoulder. "Sorry," I choked. "Traffic was hell." He laughed. Held me tighter. And in that moment, I knew. I was no longer a ghost. I was a man. And I was finally home. Freedom was strange. It didn't smell like fresh air or taste like justice. It felt like fear tight in my chest, raw in my throat. For years, every sound had meant danger. Every step had been measured. Out here, everything was chaos. Too bright. Too loud. Too free. Julian stayed close those first weeks. He took me to his apartment, a modest place with a crooked door and mismatched mugs. He gave me the bedroom, took the couch, though we both knew we'd end up in the same bed before long. At night, I'd wake up sweating, half convinced I was back in my cell. Julian would climb in next to me and wrap his arms around my shaking frame without saying a word. During the day, we built a new rhythm. He got a job working security at a school. I worked part-time at a laundromat because the irony made me laugh. The owner, Gloria, was a no-nonsense Puerto Rican woman with sharp eyes and a gospel playlist that never stopped. She didn't ask about my past. She only asked if I could fold fitted sheets without cussing. I could. Barely. But more than the job, it was the customers, people who saw me, smiled, trusted me with their clothes that slowly stitched something back together in me. One afternoon, while sorting a load of toddler pajamas, Gloria looked up from her crossword. "You sing, don't you?" I froze. "Excuse me? I heard you humming 'A Change Is Gonna Come' last week. You got a voice like butter on sorrow." I laughed. "That's a hell of a compliment." She shrugged. "You ever think about singing again? For real? No one wants to hear a felon croon about heartbreak." "I think a lot of people would," she said. "Especially now." That night, I told Julian. He leaned forward, eyes bright. "You should do it." I hesitated. "What if I'm not that person anymore?" "You're not," he said softly. "You're more." We started small. An open mic at a coffee shop downtown. Julian sat in the front row, jittery as hell, wearing his "I'm totally chill but definitely not" face. The crowd was mostly college kids with guitars and broken hearts. When I stepped up, someone snorted. I didn't blame them. I was older. Scarred. Out of place. But then I opened my mouth. And the room went still. I sang "Ain't No Sunshine." Simple. Raw. No tricks. Just pain, wrapped in melody. When I finished, the silence was thick, then a wave of applause broke like thunder. Julian stood up first. Clapping like a fool. Tears in his eyes. I smiled. And something inside mesomething I thought prison had killed breathed. We did more shows. Small clubs. Churches. Backyard gatherings. People listened. Not just to the songs but to me. To the man who had survived silence. To the man who had loved and lost and dared to love again. One night, a young man waited after a show. He looked no older than 20. I just wanted to say thank you, he said, eyes shining. I'm gay. My father's a CO. He won't talk to me. But I heard your story and it gave me hope. I hugged him. Tight. Because I knew what that kind of hope cost. But life doesn't let joy last too long without testing it. Julian came home late one night, face pale. There's been a letter. I stiffened. From who? Internal Affairs. Someone filed a complaint. My stomach dropped. About us? He nodded. Said I had a relationship with an inmate. That I compromised the integrity of the system. I laughed bitterly. The system didn't have integrity. He sat beside me, voice low. I might lose my job. You don't deserve that. Neither did you, he said. But we don't run from this. We face it. Like we always have. The investigation dragged on for months. Julian was placed on leave. People stared at us in public. A few whispered. One man spat near our feet. It brought back every prison instinct I had. My fists clenched. My jaw locked. But Julian never stopped holding my hand. The day of the hearing, I testified. I told them everything. Not just about the romance. But about the respect. How Julian never once abused his position. How he helped me rediscover my humanity not by breaking rules, but by believing I was worth more than my rap sheet. When I was done, one of the board members, an older black man, looked at me and said, "You remind me of someone I used to know. Someone the system forgot." Then he turned to Julian. "You're a good man. But in this job, perception matters." Julian nodded. I understand. 2 weeks later, they gave him a choice. Resign quietly or be terminated publicly. He resigned. And then he proposed. It wasn't some grand gesture. Just a simple question on our fire escape, knees touching, stars above. He didn't even have a ring. "Red," he said, "I don't care where we go. I just want to go with you. Will you marry me?" I said yes before he finished the question. We got married in Gloria's backyard, under a busted string of fairy lights and with a cake baked by one of the baristas from the open mic. Half the guests were ex-cons. The other half were misfits and queers and people who knew what it meant to be broken and stitched back together. We danced to Sam Cooke. We kissed until the neighbors yelled. We lived. Not everything was easy. There were nights I still woke up screaming. There were bills we struggled to pay. There were people who crossed the street to avoid us. But there was love. And laughter. And music. Julian started writing again, essays, short stories, even a script about our life. He said it helped him process. I just loved hearing him read them aloud, voice steady, eyes bright. I recorded an EP, self-funded. Just 6 tracks. I called it Laundry Room Light. It didn't top any charts. But it reached people. Letters poured in from gay teens in rural towns, from black men behind bars, from moms who didn't understand their sons but wanted to try. Each note was a reminder. We mattered. We were seen. We had turned pain into purpose. One day, a man showed up at the laundromat. Tall. Gray-haired. Nervous. Said his name was Mr. Kearns. My son, he said, voice breaking. He loved your music. He died in prison. He was gay. I stood very still. He pulled a folded photo from his wallet. I wish I'd known him better. I wish I'd listened. I didn't know what to say. So I hugged him. And we cried together. Because the world doesn't give us enough space to mourn the love we missed too late. Years passed. Gray crept into Julian's hair. My voice got raspier, richer. We bought a small house with a lemon tree in the yard, a joke between us that never stopped being funny. One day, we got a letter from the governor's office. They were offering me a pardon. Full exoneration. Wipe the record clean. I held it in my hands and shook. Julian smiled. You don't need it to be whole. I know, I whispered. But maybe someone else does. I accepted. Not for me. For every kid who's told their love is wrong. For every inmate whose voice was stolen. For Marcus. For Julian. For us. The day the pardon became official, I walked back into the prison that stole 13 years of my life. Not as an inmate. As a guest. They invited me to speak. Some new warden with ideas about restorative justice had read my letter to the parole board, heard my music, and decided it was time the inmates heard from someone who had survived both the system and himself. I almost said no. Walking back in felt like inviting the ghosts to dinner. But Julian looked at me with that soft fire in his eyes and said, "You don't owe them anything, but maybe you owe you this." So I went. The gates opened with the same mechanical groan I remembered. The smell hit instantly: bleach, sweat, fear. But I kept walking. They brought me to the same chapel where I'd first listened to his voice on a cassette tape. It hadn't changed. Rows of men sat in folding chairs, some with tattoos crawling up their necks, others with eyes so empty I couldn't look for long. And then I spoke. I didn't read from notes. I didn't rehearse. I just told them the truth. I was you, I said. I hated myself so deeply, I let the world decide who I was. I gave up my name. My voice. My love. And for a long time, I thought I deserved the silence that followed. Some men leaned forward. Some looked away. But then someone walked into a laundry room and treated me like a human being. Not a number. Not a threat. Just a man. I paused. My story isn't special because I got out. It's special because I lived again after. Because I learned that love, queer, messy, inconvenient love, was not my punishment. It was my resurrection. A murmur rippled through the room. And then I sang. A cappella. No mic. No instruments. Just me. I sang, I wish I knew how it would feel to be free. And as my voice rang out through the cinderblock walls, I saw tears on faces that hadn't cried in years. I saw hands over hearts. Heads bowed. Souls cracking open. When I finished, one man stood. He was big, bigger than Mueth ink on every inch of skin. I'm not gay, he said. But my brother was. He died inside here. I never said sorry. I never said anything. I just let him fade. Thank you. For not fading. I walked to him. Held out my hand. He took it. And in that moment, the prison wasn't just steel and concrete. It was a church. Julian met me outside, waiting by the lemon-yellow rental car we'd borrowed for the trip. How was it? He asked. I saw ghosts, I said. But I left them in peace. He kissed my forehead. We drove away in silence, the kind of silence that comes after thunder. Months later, a podcast reached out, one of those big ones about injustice and redemption. They wanted to interview me. I hesitated. But again, Julian pushed. Your voice is a door, he said. Open it. So I sat down with a host named Lila, a white woman with warm eyes and a mind like a scalpel. She asked about prison. About Marcus. About Julian. Did you always know you were gay? She asked. I always knew I was different, I said. But the word didn't come easy. I had to unlearn shame before I could speak the truth. What kept you alive? Music, I said. And him. The episode went viral. Suddenly, my inbox was full. A Netflix producer called. A publisher emailed. A teenager from Nebraska wrote me, I listened to your voice in my bedroom closet. It made me believe I'll see the sun someday. I cried reading that one. Because I remembered the darkness. And I knew how loud one sliver of light could be. Julian and I co-wrote a book. We called it The Laundry Room Confession. It told everything ugly, honest, soft, true. The love. The fear. The damn lemon tree in our front yard. When it hit the shelves, we did interviews together. People would ask, how did you fall in love in a place like that? Julian would always smile and say, the place didn't matter. It was who we saw in each other. That answer never got old. On our 5th anniversary, we held a concert at a downtown community center. Tickets were free. The crowd was packed. We had ex-cons, poets, drag queens, youth workers, single moms, teachers, and a gospel choir from the Bronx. I sang songs I used to sing in secret now loud, proud, unbroken. Julian read a letter I'd written but never sent to Marcus. There wasn't a dry eye in the place. When the music ended, I stood with the mic in hand and said, I used to think my story ended with a cell door. Now I know it begins wherever I choose to raise my voice. Applause thundered. And in the front row, Julian cried openly. I walked down and kissed him in front of everyone. And no one looked away. That night, back home, we lay under the lemon tree, the stars cutting through the summer haze. Julian laced his fingers in mine. You know what I think about, he whispered. What? How strange it was that I walked into that laundry room thinking I'd find a mop, and I found a revolution instead. I laughed. Funny, I said. I thought I was just folding socks. But I found God in your voice. We didn't say anything after that. We didn't need to. The crickets sang. The tree swayed. And in the dark, two men once broken by a world too cruel to understand them held each other close, wrapped in the softest, loudest, truest silence of all. Love. Unapologetic. Undefeated. Alive. The end. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.